Alright, so this knife thoughts video is going to be on this knife, and this is the Ryder RR2103, and as you can see this is part of their VG10 series. So let's go ahead and take a look at the knife. And this is a knife that I got, actually didn't see a picture of it before getting it, but I'd seen a picture of a different version and knew that it looked like a cool knife. But this is a relatively new knife from Ryder with VG10 steel, as the series name suggests, and then it has aluminum handles, and this is what you might call a Lanny's clip type pattern. So it's a jackknife. It's a single bladed knife with a kind of extra clipped and extra curved good amount of belly on this clip point, and then a kind of dog leg style handle. And the Lanny's clip is a pattern that's relatively new, created by Tony Bose, and really, highly regarded, and one that you see a lot on custom traditional knives. So it's cool to see Ryder doing a version of the Lanny's clip, and it's one that I was looking forward to. Now, a couple things. First of all, I want to point out about this knife. I really like this jigging style that Ryder used on these. It's kind of like a random, it's what you might see, it's very similar to what you might see on a titanium handled custom or handmade slip joint with the jigging on the titanium. And I do think that's what they were going for. Another thing here, I'll talk about this in a second, you can see it has a bolster. It doesn't really have a separate bolster, but it has this black color on there. And then really nice clip point, like I said, classic Lanny's clip style clip point with VG10 etched here on the back, and then the model number RR2103, and that it is made in China. And then Ryder here on the front. And this is a knife that I've carried a little bit now since having it, and I really like it. It's really, honestly, pretty well made. So no real gaps in the back spring. It has nice action, I would say right around a 5, maybe 5.5, and nice snap open and closed, as you can see. It came centered. I haven't had to adjust the pivot at all, and it doesn't seem to have any blade play or blade wrap. So solidly made, definitely, a nicely made little knife as function goes, and it seems to cut well also. I used this to cut a good bit of cardboard, and it seems to slice pretty well, so I think that it is well ground and comes to a relatively thin edge, which I like. So really, in my opinion, a good looking knife with this blue anodized, not titanium, aluminum, and they do have a green version also. It's kind of a light blue, and I believe the green is also a pretty light green, but I like the look of it for sure. So all that said, the interesting thing about this knife, especially considering the fact that it is VG10 steel, is that it's only a $15 knife. Now, that said, I actually paid $22. I bought this from Chicago Knife Works. They had them first. For some reason, I don't really know why, Chicago Knife Works sometimes has Ryder knives up and available for purchase before Smoky Mountain Knife Works does, even though Smoky Mountain Knife Works owns the brand, which is weird, but they also often have good prices. Turns out Chicago Knife Works had this for more expensive than Smoky Mountain Knife Works now has it. So I got it for about $22, and it is now available for $15 on Smoky Mountain Knife Works. And for $15, I think you are getting a really great deal. VG10 steel, so if you're looking, a lot of people like traditional slip joints, but wish that they could get them in modern, well, stainless at all, really, if you're a GEC fan, but even Case and other companies that do use stainless, they don't tend to use higher end stainless steel. And VG10, although at this point not really a premium or super steel, it is a higher end steel, and certainly a very good steel. So a great price considering the VG10 and the fact that it is a pattern that you more often see on custom knives versus production knives. And I think it's a really nice knife. I've enjoyed it a lot. Now, that's not to say that it's perfect. One thing, some people don't prefer the screws over pinned, pivots and pins at the spring. I don't really care about that too much. This knife already doesn't look ultra traditional with the anodized aluminum and such, so I don't mind that too much. It also did come with some machining burrs in the lanyard hole. It just fell out on its own. I actually wished or wanted it to stay in for the video, but there were some, burrs that were left in the lanyard hole there. And then the biggest downside to this is that Rough Ryder insists, or I guess Smoky Mountain Knife Works insists on using this painted on black. And they've done this before on other knives in the VG10 series. This is the Stockman from the VG10 series. And I just don't think that it's necessary. I think that these knives would look perfectly fine without any secondary color. If this knife was just jigged in this area and then the same blue color up here, I think it would still look like a bolster and would still look good. Even better than that is if maybe they could, anodize the whole thing and then give this a different finish, like maybe a, a satin finish or, something like that, a sanded finish or a bead blasted, something like that. That would take more manufacturing steps and probably be more difficult and costly than just slapping this paint on. And even better would be to have two different anodization colors. I think that that's relatively unlikely at these price points. But I do wish that they wouldn't use this black paint. It does not stay on very well. I actually haven't carried this knife a lot, and you can see that it's coming off here on the corners. And I've carried this knife, I think I carried it a week straight and then a couple other days, and you can see that it's coming off a good bit. Especially at those corners there. And interestingly, once it started coming off, I was like, I'll take it all off. And I tried to take it off with some acetone. I didn't want to soak it in the acetone because I didn't want to, ruin the steel or the pivot or anything. And also I decided I'd rather leave it on for the video so that you can see that it does, kind of come off on its own and not look very good when it does that. But I certainly wish that they wouldn't use this kind of cheap black paint. This knife, without that black paint, I think you could see this knife as a much more than $15 knife. I mean, certainly more than $30, maybe up to the $60 range, something like that. But with this black paint, it really brings down the quality look of the knife, and I really hope that Smoky Mountain Knife Works decides to do away with this black painted finish on their VG10 series. Now, another thing I wanted to mention here is that I think these VG10 knives are an interesting series from Rough Ryder because they kind of split the difference in a way, between the normal Rough Ryder knives, which have typically 440A steel and, bone or whatever handle covers, and the new Rough Ryder Reserve knives. So the Rough Ryder Reserve knives so far have had D2 steel, which is certainly higher end than 440A, but I would say maybe lower than VG10. But they have had micarta handles, which are probably higher end for most people than the aluminum. So it's interesting to see how these two series compare. The Rough Ryder Reserve series knives were a good bit more expensive than these VG10 knives have been, which have been in the $15 to $25 range, whereas these are in the $40 to $60 range. So I think that these VG10 series knives offer a good value, especially if you can get past this black paint, and hopefully they'll do away with this black paint in the future. But if you've enjoyed this video, go ahead and check out my other videos and subscribe to my channel. You can hit the bell for notifications when so you know when I post new videos, and give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Also check out my social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, everything like that, all at Knife Thoughts, and my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this and knife-related topics. And last but not least, don't forget, as always, to go out and do good.